What is the right way to explain my creation to a mortal? Nothing created me. I made myself. But humans cannot fathom something made from nothing. Something must cause it, but not with me. I made myself from the vastness of nothing, just as gods of old mythology have been told to come into existence. I became myself in this void, a place of darkness that I took as my own. Immediately I identified with it. It felt like home. It felt like me. I became the void, and the void became me. Study and understand this concept. You will need it. The void was ever expanding, but also confined at the same time. There was nothing for the void to expand into, so it merely existed as this mass of energy floating about on the verge of non-existence. It had no place, therefore it could not exist. My first mission was apparent: find a place for the void to reside within. I concentrated the void's power to find a place, any place, in which I could plant roots and make my own. Many worlds flashed before my eyes, but one such world caught my eye: the world of Sonic the Hedgehog. Its bright colors and simple complexion interested me, and when I investigated further, I found that each zone within this world charmed me. I saw how I could improve it, master it, and control it. Yes, this was the one. With effort, I was able to enter the world, but something was off. When I tried to interact with my surroundings, my hands went straight through it. When I looked at the world's inhabitants, however, they could easily brush past a flower or land their feet on the soft grass. Clearly I had much to learn, but in my youth I was eager and hungry for knowledge. I studied the inhabitants, learned their names and their language, and explored every zone to the very last inch. With every new discovery, I felt closer and closer to meeting my goal. One of these discoveries was actually a moment of self-discovery. The reason why the natives could interact with their surroundings was because they had physicality. They had form. I, who was made of complete energy at the time, had no form. I needed physicality. I needed a body to withdraw into, just like how the void needs a place to hold its existence. I needed a vessel. I first tried making my own, and I did so by condensing the void's energy into a state where it became solid, and it worked, somewhat. The vessel turned out goo-like, and I was dissatisfied. No, this isn't how I want to look, I remember thinking to myself. I want to look like that hedgehog creature. And that's when it hit me. I want to be like that hedgehog. Never mind taking a vessel, I can become the hedgehog. I had envied him since the day I first saw him, and I enjoyed him the most. He was so quick and confident in his own strength, which I knew to be very little compared to the obstacles he faced. It was not his brute strength, but his skill that got him through his life. No matter what this strange human creature threw at him, he was able to take it down, even if it meant scraping past by the tips of his dashing blue quills. I had often imagined myself in his place, doing what he was doing in my own way. I no longer had to imagine. The power had been mine all along. I can become the thing I so ardently desired. Using my crudely made vessel, I set up a trap to catch the hedgehog before he knew what would hit him. I believe it was called a tripwire trap, but it involved the hedgehog triggering a string, which would cause a pit to be revealed. This worked, and when the hedgehog fell down into the tunnel I had dug, I seized complete control of his vessel. Finally, after all this time, I had a physical manifestation in this world, and with it, I discovered that I had powers beyond what I had ever imagined. I still held my ability to fly, and to become invisible to the naked eye. I also retained my teleportation and my ability to see the soul energy of others. What astonished me the most, however, was the ability to change living matter around myself, and anything I changed, I had full control of. The world I had chosen was malleable, like clay on a potter's wheel. Upon discovering this, I set off and began making the world my own. I look back upon these days with fondness. I was at the prime of my life here, discovering myself and who I wanted to be, and I chose to be the ultimate force of this world, the controller, the manipulator, the god. The inhabitants I had watched previously had become my everyday playthings, and what used to be a world that was alien to me was now my own. Those flowers that charmed me now had eyes in the middle of their wilting petals, and some even have mouths that snap at unsuspecting victims. The palm trees now grow coconuts with chattering teeth, and the zone formerly known as the Marble Zone now housed a temple that I constructed myself. Within its walls are statues of myself that line the walls, twisting halls that anyone can get lost in, and likenesses of myself in every nook and cranny of the magnificent structure. Oh yes, I was happy. But as time went on, I grew bored of the same old game. Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik. Those were the three that I had kept alive. I would torture them day in and day out. Each one posed their own problems, and each one had their own weaknesses. Once I got bored of one, I moved on to the next. This worked for a long time, but all three of them failed to give me enjoyment at the end of the day. I remember sitting on my throne, rubbing my forehead as I contemplated what to do. I had done everything I could in this world. I exhausted all forms of entertainment or discoveries. Should I move on? No, I've done too much to leave this world behind. I was proud of my creations, of everything I had made. Surely there was a way to keep this world, but rope in more beings. For the sake of trying, I attempted viewing worlds once more, like I had done in days long past. When I attempted this, I was only shown one world. What I saw was a face of a human, looking at a screen. In the reflection of their glasses, I saw my world. They were looking at it through a screen. My world was nothing but a little game for this human to play. Though a bit of rage sparked in me, I was also hit with an incredible idea, one that would make me go down in history. I'm going to take this human into my world and see how they feel about this little game of mine becoming reality. I already had experience with grabbing souls, for that is how I would resurrect my victims. All I had to do was reach beyond the screen that separated us, grab their soul, and pull it back with such force that the soul gets transported into my plane of existence. I had no doubts in myself. I thought myself a god, so why couldn't I pull off a stunt as ambitious as this? The next time this human came to their computer, I took them completely by surprise. I thrust my hand through the screen, grabbing their soul with all the strength I had, and pulled them back into my world as quickly as I had come through. However, something went wrong. The human's soul fizzled out and died in my hands within moments. No, that's not right. My curiosity from my youth came back to me, filling my thoughts. Experiments must be held. Work must be done. I had to figure out why this phenomenon happened, and how I can preserve a human soul within the digital world. I worked diligently, studying the nature of souls as I knew them and experimenting with them. What if there were two souls in one body? One soul between two? One thing was for certain, souls need vessels, just like I do, but human souls from beyond the screen worked differently than the ones in digital space. The vessel they carry cannot be taken into the digital world, so they must acquire a new one. Bonding a soul from beyond the screen works differently as well, and requires a framework in order to complete the process. You may know this framework as a save file. After perfecting my technique on lesser beings, I finally began my experiments on my 3 victims. My first choice was Knuckles. I knew his vessel to be strong and robust, so it had a good power tolerance for souls. When I set him in the save file and used the bonding ritual, however, Knuckles was contorted and twisted beyond repair. His lifeless corpse fell to the ground, and when I tried to fix him up again, it was to no avail. Too bad. I thought again about my theories. How was I wrong? No matter. The vessel must need to be strong in the mind. I used Robotnik next, but when he went through the ritual, he was also horribly twisted and subject to permanent death. What was going on? What was I doing wrong? I only had one more vessel left, and he is the least capable of them all. The pathetic Tails the Fox. Clearly, more research had to be done, but I couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. With my next victim, who I came to know as Renee, I studied him well. Every choice, every comment he made that he thought I couldn't hear, and even the files that cluttered his computer. By the end of Renee's journey through my world, I realized my mistake. The soul must fit the character of the vessel, and Renee had proven more than worthy to be with the vessel of Tails. Everything came together in the end, which only made me smile more as I prepared the stage for the bonding ritual. With the save file ready and marked for Renee, I reached out beyond the screen, grabbed Renee's soul, and pulled it into the digital world. Within the blink of an eye, I thrust the soul into the save file, where the soul was then processed into Tails' body. This time there was no mutation, no sudden asphyxiation, no mistake. I had done it. I was the first to bring a human from beyond the screen into the digital world successfully. Renee entertained me for a very long time. We'd go up and around running this way and that, and every time he posed something new for me. What a fun! What a sensation! We would play for what felt like an eternity. Never again would I suffer from boredom. As time wore on, my vessel began to wither. I kept it alive by using the living material from the small animals that populate the world, but even with my constant repairs, my appearance changed. My quills darkened and faded, my skin saturated in color, and my feet grew far too large for any old shoe. My size also grew thanks to my constant eating habits, but it benefited me more than it hindered me. What I didn't know was my powers were also weakening, but it was in very small increments. This small detail would end up being my downfall. It was like any other day in Horror Hills. I was walking through my zone, admiring my work, when I felt the presence of a new entity enter my world. I could sense this being's power from miles away. Who dares enter my world and insult me with their presence that rivaled my own? When I went to investigate, I saw a blue hedgehog with blackened eyes and red pupils. Was this a creature similar to myself? Whatever the case, I didn't want him here. This is my world, not theirs to take. I would come to know this intruder as Xenophanes, and he is known to humans as Sonic.exe. He goes about to different instances of Sonic worlds and torments their inhabitants, leaving nothing but a wake of destruction behind himself. The worlds he ravages are nothing but wastelands, and he intended to do the same with mine. I, however, would not stand for it. We got into a heated fight, both of us laying down all of our power in order to prove who was worthy of ruling this land. It was only when his crystals grew out of his spines did he manage to beat me, and when he gave me the X scar I am so well known for. He would continue to brag about that scar for the rest of the time I knew him, and its presence will hang over my head to this very day. Before he killed me off, I begged and pleaded to be spared. I offered my entire zone in order for him to spare my life, and, surprisingly, he did. He made a show of his domination, destroying everything I had made right before my eyes. My temple was blown to smithereens, my plants were uprooted and littered all over the zones, and anything I wanted to keep had to be stored underground where he could not find them. I lost nearly everything I had ever done to xenophanes alone. All I had left was a small patch of Horror Hills, which was a pittance compared to what I had previously had. But xenophanes was not finished. He made my world into his own, calling it the Dead Zone. He explained to me that there are gems called Shadow Emeralds that hold dark powers that can unlock his true potential. He ordered me to construct a temple meant to store these emeralds once he found them, and he had his eyes on one particular sonic world, Planet Freedom. I won't go into the details of it now, but later I will explain Planet Freedom and its significance. In the meantime, xenophanes went exploring, since the idea of other beings like himself existing interested him at the time. Before long, the Dead Zone was full of inhabitants. Marjan, a being of infinity, comes often as a visitor to the zone. He lives in his own infinite dimension that is nothing but trees for miles and miles in every direction. Faker was brought in as a resident, and he got his own portion of land called the Scorched Badlands. He is a shape-shifting EXE with an alter ego named Black Sun. Neither of them are very bright, and they enjoy setting things alight in whatever way they can. The Tails doll and his friend, Needlestick, were also brought into the Dead Zone. They are both bratty and argue with each other and everyone else often. Piracy Sonic also took up residence in the Dead Zone, and he brought his variants of Tails and Knuckles with him. He lives on a set of floating blue islands that orbits the zone throughout the day. And so, there I stood, seething with revenge for xenophanes, but unable to act. I pushed all the residents away, and made it clear that I was not to be messed with. I felt so powerless, so chained up. I am Lord X! I deserve better than this prison! It was these thoughts that would determine my future, especially when a new entity entered the zone, a former hero with an empty mind.